Hello, brothers and sisters. Thank you for your prayers. I'm starting to turn the corner on my illness, I believe. And it's only through your prayers, I'm sure of it. Thank you so much for your prayers. It was a really hard night last night. Wake up screaming with the cramps setting in my stomach. And about 2 o'clock this morning, things started to turn around. A lot of the swelling went down, the pain and cramping. I didn't get much sleep last night, so I kind of took naps every time that I could fall asleep through the pain for an hour and a half at a time. Since like 9:30 yesterday, and it's 2 p.m. now. So thank you so much. I'm going to read for us. Finally got over the headache too. It was like everything was going wrong all at once. Extreme pain in my head. Sinus was all clogged up. Ears were clogged up. Just jolts of stabbing pain in my abdomen. But glory to God, and thank God for healing, and thank you for your prayers. I think I'm just going to stay home today and do readings because there's just some other complications going on yet. But I think I'll be good to help take one of the people I care for shopping tomorrow. So I'm hopeful. First article that I'm going to read for us. Here I am, Lord, memories of Father Daniel Sisyev, Archpriest Artemy Vladimirov. Father Daniel was quite a remarkable priest. He flashed among us Moscow pastors like a comet, like an autumn star cutting across the horizon, appearing and instantly vanishing, yet leaving behind a trail of light. As a young priest, I often visited the large Sisyev family. It was nice to spend time with them, at least for an hour or two. Daniel, the oldest of the boys, was finishing high school then. I spoke with his father, Alexei, an artist and director of the Rezdona Prep School, a lofty romantic and simply a very kind person. The mother of the future priest was always bustling, caring, tender-hearted, lively, cheerful, and boisterous children, inclined toward mischief and serious creative endeavors. After that, Father Daniel and I saw each other rarely but memorably. I remember his joyful smile at our completely unexpected encounter at Sharm el-Sheikh, a resort on the Red Sea. We ran into each other in a Muslim town filled with merchants dressed in beige and light green full-length robes. Their clothes were quite like the Cossacks that the Orthodox clergy wear in Russia. Batushka, with his characteristic charming openness, immediately recommended a fish restaurant where you could get us something cheap and delicious. Matushka Yulia nodded modestly and then smiled in agreement, always sociable and ready to share the news. Father Daniel announced with a huge smile that he'd already bought 2 cassocks from the Muslims, intending to test out the new garments back home. I remember his amazingly kind eyes, beaming with joy in the Lord. This is what an Orthodox priest should be like. I thought then it's bad when we priests look preoccupied, gloomy, when we show emotional stinginess with people, even if only for a minute. I remember the Kursk seminary where Father Daniel and I spoke to an audience of priests, with Vladika German in attendance. This was about 5 years ago. Batushka took the podium and spoke to us about missionary work. He seemed like a rider on a war horse. His gestures resembled blows from a saber. Batushka chopped through the air with his hand, accentuating his vigorous, crisp, richly intonated speech. He spoke with determination convincingly, as if anticipating objections from a possible opponent. I noticed then the breadth of his horizons and the thoroughness of his theological positions. I was struck by his effortless citation of the Old Testament prophets, one of whom had shared his name with him. Father Daniel knew no spiritual compromises and didn't want to know them. For him, comparative theology was precisely accusatory, as it was called in Russia 200 years ago. Either all or nothing. Either you're an Orthodox Christian or an accomplice of the dark forces trampled by Christ's resurrection. Such was the spiritual philosophy of the murdered priest of God. I already knew then about Batushka's vigorous parish activities, his missionary school, and his fearless debates with those of other faiths. I also heard about the threats liberally showered upon the young rector by anonymous voices over the phone. Batushka should have been born in the Tsarist Russia under the wing of the autocrat of all Rus. But he lived in Moscow of the third millennium, which had long forgotten the vocation of the third Rome. Father Daniel so loved the heavenly fatherland that in his fervor he paid little heed to the fate of the earthly fatherland. The fire burning in his chest summoned him to the celestial spheres, where he drew his listeners, eager to lead them beyond the bounds of human history as quickly as possible. Many sensed that for him, as for the holy apostle Paul, death would be gain. He lived by the thought of meeting Christ, the Son of the living God. The death of Father Daniel, was it God's allowance or his providence? A lack of caution or the beneficent finger of God? His Holiness Patriarch Kirill said it best at Father Daniel's funeral, which gathered several thousand Muscovites. The most eloquent sermon of the murdered priest Daniel Sisavev is his blood shed in the midst of the church entrusted to him, blood that splattered the epitrachlion, only just removed from the head of the repentant sinner. At these words from the patriarch, the clouds that completely covered the sky suddenly parted, and a shaft of light poured down upon the church where the funeral service was concluding. They say that the murderer who entered through the church that night asked, "Where's Father Daniel?" He stepped forward and said, "That's me," and then the shots rang out. Long ago, a holy biblical youth, sleeping by the tabernacle of witness, heard in the depths of the night the voice of God, "Samuel, Samuel." Rising at once before the face of the unknown, he answered, "Here I am, Lord." Archpriest Artemy Vladimirov, Alexievsky Monastery, 11/19/2025. Howdy, everybody. I'll start reading the next article for us. Let me go down with the ship. On the heroism of the crew of the mine layer Prut and hero monk Anthony Smirnov, by Vadim Pokopenko. On October 29, 2025, 111 years have passed since the heroism of hero monk Anthony Smirnov of the Black Sea Fleet. In recent times, attention to the history of the First World War is expressed mainly in addressing local and regional topics, studying individual personalities and major anniversary events. A small number of book publications are represented, mainly by collections of archival documents and memoir literature of the state, political, and military figures, which is largely due to the relatively limited number of naval combat episodes in the Black Sea Fleet, compared to the operations on the land front. The First World War, in historical perspective, belongs to the relatively recent past. However, the subsequent political transformations, the revolution, the Civil War, and the formation of a state with different ideology, long displaced the events and their heroes from public discussions. In this regard, particular significance can be found by turning to the heroic heritage associated with the actions of the mine layer Prut, the heroism of the crew and the ship's priest, hero monk Anthony Smirnov. In recent years, tentative discussions have been held within the religious community considering the question of possible canonization of the Navy hero monk. In August 1914, the Russian Empire entered the world conflict. On the eve of the war, the population of the Sevastopol municipal district was about 72,000 people. On October 16, 1914, martial law was declared in the city. In the Fortress District, alcohol prohibition was introduced, mass events were prohibited, and the checkpoint regime was strengthened. At the beginning of the hostilities, the mine layer Prut was not one of the new ships. By this time, it had been in service for about 35 years. The vessel was accepted into the Black Sea Fleet in 1895 as a training ship for the machinist school. In the summer of 1905, a mutiny occurred on board, which ended with the arrest of the participants and the execution of the instigators. In 1909, the ship was converted into a mine layer. It became the largest vessel of this class in the Black Sea Fleet. Along with performing combat tasks, the vessel was used as a training base for students of the mine school, as well as for transporting members of the imperial court and baggage of the imperial family along the sea line Sevastopol to Yalta. Vasily Smirnov was born in 1844 in Samara province in the family of a priest, and from an early age chose spiritual service. Upon graduation from Samara Theological School at the age of 19, he arrived at the Moisky Holy Trinity Monastery. The ecclesiastical records characterized him as very good, capable for the position of treasurer. The abbot of the monastery at that time was a hero monk, Aaron Sokolov, who had fought in the Crimean War. The monk spent 15 years in the monastery. Then, at his request, he was transferred to the Sedmios Zernaya Bogorodichnaya Hermitage near Kazan, in whose records his behavior was characterized as very good. In 1881, at the age of 38, Vasily Smirnov took monastic vows with the name of Anthony and soon transferred to the Kazan St. John the Forerunner Monastery. Here he performed the duties of the confessor at the Kazan Theological Academy and the women's Bogoroditsky Monastery, which speaks to his high standing and theological expertise. In the spring of 1903, Father Anthony was transferred to the Vyskokorogoskaya Upensko Nikolaveskaya Chirkinskaya Hermitage of the Astrakhan Diocese, and 3 years later to the Bugominsky Alexandro Nevsky Monastery, where he celebrated his 65th birthday. The reports of this period of service also contain exclusively positive evaluations. The key turning point came in 1909 when he was sent to the fleet for a 5-year pastoral service on the military vessel Prut. The ship's priest was provided a separate cabin, allowed to approach the vessel from the starboard side, a privilege of commanders and holders of the Order of St. George. Going ashore was permitted once a week on Thursdays after morning prayer. In the report of 1914, it was noted, he treats the lower ranks excellently and with love, in all respects a very respected pastor in person. The ship's commander characterized him as very capable for educational and moral guidance activities. On October 16, 1914, without a formal declaration of war from Turkey, a strike was inflicted on the city from the ship guns of the German-Turkish battlecruiser Goeben. It was answered by 8 coastal batteries and the ship St. George the Victorious. On this day, miscalculations occurred, as a result of which the Goeben passed through a deactivated minefield. The modern German battlecruiser, the flagship of the Turkish fleet, was transferred to the Ottoman Empire by the German side and was distinguished by powerful artillery and mine torpedo armament. The cruiser Goeben was justifiably characterized as an immeasurably strong enemy. The operation of the enemy fleet against Russian Black Sea ports began with the aim of inflicting significant damage to the naval forces of the Russian Empire and drawing Turkey into the war. The cities of Odessa, Feodosia, Kerch, and Novorossiysk were also subjected to strikes. The combat logs recorded the approach of the ships near Cape Chirosnes and fleet's attempt to stabilize the situation. The Prut was returning from Yalta, previously sent to transport an infantry battalion to Sevastopol, but soon received an order to proceed to the base for mine laying. The encounter with the Goeben occurred in the area of Cape Chironos. The destroyer's Lieutenant Pushkin Zivuchi and Zharki came to the aid of the mine layer. During the attacks, one of them caught fire and the crew suffered losses. After some time with another hit, the Prut was seriously damaged. The conditions of increasing threat of capture of the ship, a decision was made to scuttle it, which predetermined the drama of the subsequent actions of the crew. The order was given by the ship's commander, Captain Second Rank Grigory Baikov, since the presence on board of 700 mines created a risk of powerful detonation, and allowing secret armament to fall into enemy hands was impermissible. The primary risk taken into account was of the enemy capturing the ship before it sank. Lieutenant Alexander Roguski initiated the explosion of the powder magazine, but perished himself. Contemporaries evaluated his heroic act as exceptional, even against the background of numerous examples of heroism during the war. The fire from the Goeben on the sinking ship continued, and a fire broke out on the Prut. After the enemy's signal of "I propose that you surrender" to the mine layer, the St. Andrew's flag was raised in response, and the command was given to abandon the vessel and make their way to shore on their own. Due to a shortage of boats and the presence of wounded, the ship's priest refused to take his place, giving it to the sailors. He said these words, "Save yourselves. I have already lived out my life in this world." The monk donned his vestments, went out onto the burning deck with the gospel and blessed the sailors, after which the ship with the flag slowly went under the water. In the information about Hero Monk Anthony, it's recorded, "Place of death, the sea near Sevastopol." In that year, his 5 term of naval service was to end. The information about Hero Monk Anthony is recorded, "Place of death, the sea near Sevastopol." The sinking of the Prut was a tangible loss for the fleet, the situation that developed after the battle, complicated by errors of naval specialists, and the loss of part of the crew affected the timing and content of the initial reports about what had happened. Part of the crew, including the commander, ended up in captivity, probably for this reason. Local and central publications did not immediately report on the battle. According to various data, 26 sailors perished along with the ship. In December 1914, the Crimean Herald published the decision of the Holy Synod to call upon the Orthodox clergy on the nearest established day for commemoration to raise everywhere the name of Hero Monk Anthony at the divine service. After which the commemorations of the ship's priest of the Black Sea Fleet were held in all churches of the Russian Empire. The journal Historical Herald, published in 1915, detailed recollections of the last days of the priest's life. He was described as a highly moral and deeply believing pastor. Several episodes of his clairvoyance a few days before the tragedy were also reported. According to eyewitness recollections, on the eve of the battle, Father Anthony told acquaintances, "Why should my things drown in the sea? Take them and keep them." Shortly before his death, declining a promotion with transfer to first rank vessel, he replied, "No, let me go down with the Prut." The essay speaks of the priest's foresight of the tragic events, indicating that the pastoral entourage called him a lamp of faith and virtue. He did not leave the sailors and officers of the ship, going down with them on the last combat mission. On November 7th, 1914, Archpriest of the military and naval clergy G.I. Shevelsky presented to the Holy Synod material on the heroism, following the consideration of which in the Church Gazette a call was published on the raising everywhere of the name of Hero Monk Anthony at the divine service during the commemoration of those who laid down their lives in battle for faith, Tsar, and fatherland. Soon the edition in memory of the glorious was published with a photograph of the ship and a list of those who perished in the Prut, where among with the sailors are given the names of Lieutenant Rogushki, Midshipman Smirnov, and Hero Monk Anthony Smirnov. Of interest are publications in the regional diocesan gazettes, published in the places of the monk's service, where all of them call the priest their pastor. Thus, the Astrakhan Diocesan Gazette in May 1915 published an article in memory of the pastor hero, former resident of Astrakhan, where it is reported that Father Anthony was a personality of high morality, deeply believing, a deeply convicted Christian and humble. Father Anthony became the first Russian military priest and the only one in the fleet to be posthumously awarded the Order of St. George of the Fourth Degree. The Sevastopol press emphasized the unprecedented nature of such respect for the military of a simple hero monk, and it was also reported about the wide international renaissance of the heroism, comparing the death of the Prut with the legendary cruiser Varyag. Pravoslavy.ru 11/19/2025. It's kind of interesting even back then that the Germans were helping the Ottoman Empire to try to take over Russia. And what do we see happening now? We see the Germans trying to help the Ottoman Empire fight Russia. We see the rise of the Ottoman Empire in the United States. We see it in Minnesota, where people that we took into America who are basically enemies are preaching Islam to try to take over our country from within. America is a Christian nation. We forget that. America is a Christian nation. Even though we allow everybody to worship in the way that they choose in America, America is a Christian nation. There's a separation of church and state, and that's so that the state can't affect the church. But we need to stop pretending that the rise of the Ottoman Empire isn't coming again. And if we let it, it'll destroy our country. If you study Islam, you study the writings of Ptolemy, what he wrote about Muhammad, what Muhammad confessed to him, you realize it's not a religion. It was a pyramid scheme of violence. The more territory that Muhammad conquered with his band of thieves, the more he promised to those that would go out and kill for his regime. He promised people slaves and riches if they just go out and kill for him to give him more power. It's a pyramid scheme. Muhammad didn't know anything about Christianity other than how to try to destroy it. And he came 600 years after. It's so shameful that we keep pretending that somehow that's a religion. We need to start calling it out as the pyramid scheme it is. Become familiar with the Quran and understand that everything it teaches is heresy and lies and delusion. Father Daniel Sisiev sent out missionaries into several parts of northern Iraq and taught missionaries in several dialects how to reach the people there and how to bring them the good news, how to bring them the truth. And that's why he was martyred. But when we have people thinking that they're going to bring Sharia law to the United States to be able to force women to live under their subjugation, to be able to do horrible things to women, I wish I could show you the things that happen in Iran, where women are held down over a great big bowl and their throats slashed and their blood is filled into the bowl. The horrible brutalization, forced circumcision of women, disfigurement. We can't pretend in ignorance that what's going on in America isn't to try to make us weak. The people that are bringing this perversion into the United States are seeking to destroy our country from within. They want men to become weak and divided. If we cared about these people, we wouldn't be taking them in as refugees. We'd go to their countries with overwhelming force, destroy all their corrupt political leaders, and help them set up a constitutional republic in their own homeland. But obviously, that's not what we want to do. We're allowing our politicians to bring these people into our country to make us weak so that we can't stand up for ourselves against the corrupt politicians and against their endless exploitation. Immigration in the U.S. has become a tool of exploitation to destroy the American citizen. For anyone to claim that it's anything else is moronic. If you think about it, how long would it take for the American military, for the Marines, to take over these countries where these so-called refugees come from? How long would it take for us to crush every Somali warlord and to set up a constitutional republic in their homelands? We have to open our eyes and be vigilant. I love you all so much. And I think it was absolutely shameful what the Pope said. The Pope kissing the backside of the leader of Turkey and allowing them to continue to run the Hagia Sophia as a mosque, which is unacceptable, absolutely unacceptable. And he was saying that basically everyone that didn't want Islam to take over their country was racist. And even he was pandering and having a hard time trying to sell the garbage that he'd pre-written himself and stumbled several times during his speech. If you watch Christian Prince, his channel yesterday had something on about the Pope. So if you watch that and listen to the Pope in his own words, you see how disgusting and shameful and vile his acts are. That's why Orthodoxy is never going to become a part of the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is anathema, is heresy. And I hope all the Catholics of the Catholic Church take a close, good, hard look at what their Pope says and does, where their church is, what they believe, and comes to the true church to come back to Orthodoxy. I love you all, brothers and sisters. Yeah, it was a terrible speech that the Pope said, and shame on him. He's already been promoting the Alphabet Mafia's marriages. He's already been promoting so much evil, allowing Islamic prayers to be conducted in the Vatican. He's an evil man, living his life in delusion. And that's not just my judgment. Pray for him. Pray that he's delivered from his delusion and his satanic activities. So I love you all, brothers and sisters. I'm starting to get well. I'm taking it really easy. I haven't left the house. Thank you for all your prayers last night. I know that your prayers healed me. I know and I believe that. I was in such pain last night that I'd wake up screaming about every hour and a half with severe stabbing cramps in my abdomen. So thank you so much. God bless you all. I love you, brothers and sisters. I'll be back on a little bit later. I'm just going to take it really easy throughout the day and rest up. And I'll see you back here in a bit. God bless.